Hello and welcome to the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode number 13. Attack Angle against Launch Angle. It is volume 2 of our data series today. I'm Jim, and joining me as always, renowned hitting instructor, professional evaluator, my former coach, friend, and co-host, live in living color in Texas, Jake Epstein. Hello, Jake.
Yes, sir. Excited for today. Launch
Yes.
angle and attack angle. Still a very confusing subject matter, and a lot of parents and players actually don't really understand the difference of the two and how they relate to each other and how one can affect the other one. So this will be a good topic to cover for, whether you're a player, a coach, or even a parent.
Well, the first volume of our data series is currently available in the archives. We discuss data in more of a broader picture. And so check that out wherever you get your podcast. Hey, quick question I want to ask you, by the way. Shohei Ohtani, great athlete, arguably one of the best overall athletes in all of Major League Baseball right now. His career's been hampered by the Tommy John surgery. What do you see for his future, though, just from the hitting standpoint? Is he more of a hitter, or would it be better for his career if he just stuck to pitching?
I think he could do both, actually. I really don't think the hitting will take away too much from his pitching. I do think he's a better pitcher than he is if he had to pick one. Mm-hmm. I think his stuff is pretty darn electric, not to throw a guy out there on the mound. Now, if he's injury-ridden, that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah.
From a hitting standpoint, he's very talented and athletic and has amazing hands. Mm-hmm. His lower body is pretty goofy. If you watch him hit, he's kind of got the early nose stride. It's kind of a choppy move, and he doesn't really get his hips through ever. Mm-hmm. So he will end up getting exposed middle in big time. Like pitchers are smart. If they miss, he's going to make you pay because he's so talented. But he'll start to get exposed in there, and then he'll have to start to cheat to get his barrel to the inside pitch, and then all of a sudden they'll be able to expose him with off-speed stuff. So I think unless he makes changes with his lower half, mm-hmm. I think he can be a big league hitter, but I don't think he's going to be as dominant a hitter as he could be as a pitcher.
Well, right now, and it's early, but he's kind of in a crossroads, and I say that because of the aforementioned injury. But the other day, Jake, he walked 8 on 50 pitches in an inter-squad game. So, oof.
That's a
Yikes.
problem.
Yeah, yikes. But his exit velocity last year, just to give more perspective to this, was 92.8. So I guess, and you mentioned that the exit velocity a week ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, 2 episodes prior to this one, that the exit velocity, you don't want to focus too much on it, but it has to be at a certain number so that you can play at the highest level, or play at a higher level. So 92.8, that's right up there with the top 5, top 10 exit velocities, according to Baseball Savant, in Major League Baseball from a year ago.
And that's a guy that finds barrels.
Yeah.
That's all that means. It doesn't mean that 90, his average, it doesn't mean that his 100-mile-an-hour exit velocities are 25 or 30 degrees in their home runs.
Sure.
They could be 8 or 10 degrees, line drives up the middle. So, exit velocity means that you can find a barrel. It means you're big and strong. And he's a big, strong dude with a lot of leverage. So he's going to hit the ball hard. Mm-hmm. The fact is, his exit velocity average is high, means he can hit, right? Like he's finding barrels. What do you do with those barrels? Are you 6'5" and you have a slugging percentage of, 375, or you have a slugging percentage of 575? So that's kind of where he fits in.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, his career, to say the least, because he is, you mentioned 6'5". I mean, he looks like he can go on to the basketball court because of his height and his size and because of his athleticism and be very successful. And you wonder mentally how to get him in that right mindset to where he can be successful in both avenues. And I think the one biggest thing with him is let him DH, never let him play the outfield or a position, and then maybe try to pitch him out of the bullpen. I'm not sold completely, I guess, on the idea that he can do both. And that's not a knock on him or his athleticism. It's just that these guys at the major league level are the top 1%. And some guys have trouble doing one thing. And it seems like while he's not struggling to do one thing, he's ultimately trying to find his way to be successful with either pitching or hitting right now as it stands.
And you won't know till he's healthy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when he gets healthy and he gets the feel back in his arm, you know, is he dominant? You know, he's got a 6-year run on that new ligament in his elbow. Yeah. So, you know, are these going to be electric 6 years, or is he not going to get that feeling back? And, you know, maybe he becomes a right fielder or something like that and hits. But he'll hit. I mean, he's going to hit. He's going to hit 285 and above.
Yeah.
And he'll hit some home runs because he's a big dude and he's athletic. He's just a guy that doesn't quite maximize everything that his body has. Now, we talked about strength, athleticism trumps everything. I mean, you know, look at Hunter Pence. That dude could jump out of a gym.
Yeah.
And he throws funny and he hits funny, but everything he does is hard. He hits balls hard. He throws balls hard. He runs hard. You know, so the issue with Ohtani is if he was 5'11" and 200 pounds, 195 pounds, he wouldn't be able to get away with what he does offensively.
That's a good comp, too, I think, with Hunter Pence. They're kind of the same size. They look the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They just kind of move differently, I guess. But their body types are very similar. All right, let's dive into today's topic. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. New episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. We're also on social media, at Epstein Hitting on Twitter and Instagram, at Jim Tara. And you can send us your questions via social media or our email, jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. That is jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. We are on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, and we've got some clips on SoundCloud as well, so be sure to check out those clips from previous episodes. Today's topic, attack angle against launch angle, and we want to try to sort of decipher the two and hopefully give people a better understanding of what the two really represent with a high-level swing. So we'll start with attack angle. That's one that you seemingly use a lot more than launch angle, especially with your experience in blast motion technology. Just to give a broader sense for everybody, what is, in your words, the definition of attack angle?
So attack angle is what the bat is doing at point of contact. Okay, so when you get a reading off of, you know, a blast or the other you know, bat sensor devices that are out there, it's what the bat is doing at point of contact. So it's not there's not a certain number that's perfect, because it depends on where contact is made. So if we make contact deeper in the zone, typically your attack angle is going to be less. If you make contact more out in front on the way to your follow through, your attack angle is going to be more. So you have to utilize video with the attack angle to find out, you know, is that the right spot? If a player's hitting the ball at their front toes and their attack angle is 10 to, say, 13 or 14, that's awesome. If they're making contact at their front toes and their attack angle is 20 degrees, that is not awesome.
Sure.
Because then you can have a player that just lets the ball get really deep and says, oh, my attack angle is 10, that's great. Well, it shouldn't be 10 there, and they start flaring everything or topping balls to the pull side. So that is when you have to bring in the launch angle readings, or you just have to have vision to see where that ball is going.
Yeah. Just to get this part out of the way, too, I'm not sure how you measure this importance, but the difference of the metric, how does it pertain? You mentioned golf a lot on the podcast. How does it pertain to golf and baseball, the attack angle? And what are the similarities and what are the differences?
Yeah, you know, I've never really used it on attack angle, but I know a little bit about it, I guess, in golf, because I try to get better at golf and I don't. So, like with the driver, for instance, you know, your attack angle with the driver, you know, everybody used to say you got to swing down, you know, on the ball with the golf club, but with a driver, you actually want to be swinging up, because when you swing down too much, it creates too much spin.
Sure.
Okay. It'll create too much backspin and the ball won't carry. You know, you're looking at like maybe 7,000 RPMs versus 15 to 2,500, which is what you want with the driver. So players that are taller in golf usually create more spin. They come down on it a little bit more, and it costs them distance. So for baseball, attack angle, I have players that I say, like for instance, last night I'm working with a player that was very talented here. He's going to play in college here at the lab, and he's a good hitter, right? And he hits balls to right center field. He's a right-handed hitter. And I put the blast on him, and his vertical bat angle was like -43. And I was like, holy smokes, no wonder. He was working with, one of my other instructors. Mm-hmm. He was working with Matt, and Matt was trying to get him to, try to get a little bit more backspin instead of side spin. So I'm like, well, put this on. Let's see what's really going on. So he was like, the first three were like -40s or something. And his exit velocity, again, front toss with bad balls, it was like 80, 88, 89. Yeah. And so I'm like, but his attack angle was good, mm-hmm. right? So he was swinging up at like, I shouldn't say it wasn't bad. He was only swinging up at like 3 or 4 degrees. So that's actually a little bit flat. Like he wasn't swinging up very much, but because his vertical bat angle was so steep, he was hitting everything kind of in the air. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what we need to do is, because your spin is terrible off the bat, we need to get this 43 degrees to 25 degrees. Can you do that? Right. And he's like, I don't know. So we said, okay, do this. In like 7 swings, he adjusted his vertical bat angle. So instead of it being in the 40s, now it was in the -20s. Mm-hmm. Okay. And his attack angle actually went up. Okay. So now his attack angle was closer to 10 instead of closer to 0, which is good. So he was swinging up more with less barrel drop. And then we had him on the hip tracks as well, right? We're stacking all our technology. Yeah. And all of a sudden his exit velocity went up 4 miles an hour. And then he was like at 91, 92 with his exit velo. So you can use technology to make little changes. And those weren't wholesale changes. This was an athletic kid who's 18 years old. And we said, do this. He already had a very good swing. It was kind of an inside-out swing, which there's nothing wrong with that. But we were trying to get him a little bit more power because he's 5'8". He does hit the ball hard for being 5'8". And then all of a sudden, boom, there's a 3-4 mile an hour boost in exit velocity just by changing a vertical bat angle and an attack angle at the same time.
I think you alluded to it right there, but what should the minimum attack angle be, or at least in the vicinity of, for hitters to be successful in different zones?
That's a good question.
Yeah, okay. So what would be that minimum attack angle?
For baseball players, not softball, but for baseball, typically when a player goes the other way and they let the ball get deeper, I look at a 5, and this is plus or minus, maybe 2 degrees. You can add or subtract 2, but typically 5 when they let the ball get deep, 10 about at their front toes, and then 15 if they make contact in front of their front toes. So 5 to 15 is a good range. For softball, I'm looking at more like 2 to 12. Mm-hmm. 2 to 12, just a little bit flatter. Girls will, they don't swing up quite as much. They still don't chop down or anything like that. They're still swinging up. They're just swinging up less because of the angle, the release point of the softball. And most balls are still dropping. Like 90% of balls in softball are dropping. They're just dropping less.
Sure. Well, I look at like a pitch on the outer half, right at the knees, outer half, one of the best pitches that a pitcher can throw and one of the hardest pitches that a hitter struggles with. What's a proper attack angle for that type of pitch? And then vice versa with a pitch that's, I'm talking from the left-handed hitting side of things, mm-hmm. that perspective. What's a proper attack angle for a pitch down and in, and then low and away at the knees, right on the back of the plate, that would be called a strike?
So the attack angle will be pretty similar on depth, mm-hmm. meaning if it's an outside pitch, whether it's up or down, mm-hmm. Your attack angle is going to be pretty close. The pitch low and away, like that's the hardest pitch to get barrel on, right?
Sure.
You're looking at what happens on that, and that pitch you actually have to drop your barrel more. So you're going to have a steeper vertical bat angle to get to that pitch. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's why we don't hit it quite as far, and it'll have a little bit more side spin on it. But you're still looking at an attack angle, low and away at the knees. You're probably still looking at roughly a 5-degree attack angle.
Sure.
I would still stay in that category. If it's down and in, you're still going to be, closer to 15 degrees out in front, 10 to 15 degrees if it's down and in. But again, the barrel drop is the difference, not as much the attack angle, how much it's moving up. So you still really want to stay in those confines of 5 to 15 degrees when you're hitting. And you can do that with a bat. You can play around, or not with a bat, with a tee. You can play around with those different contact points with the tee, then front toss, and then obviously you start monitoring off, velocity.
The Epstein family, Mike and Jake, have been teaching attack angle, and they know this for many, many years, but it hasn't been measured before. Now it's being measured, so I feel like it's making your job a lot easier. And I sometimes wonder what your father could have done, Mike Epstein, if he had a couple of these measurables like you do at his fingertips. When you apply these certain metrics with the attack angle, what kind of drills, based off that number that a hitter may have? Well, let me ask this first, before I ask what kind of drills you then formulate for a player's plan. Is determining attack angle one of the first things you do when a player arrives at the lab or comes to you to work with them? Is that one of the first things you're determining to help better understand what their swing is and what the roadmap could be for where we need to get that player to get to with his swing?
It can be skewed, because like I said, it gives you the number point of contact. Mm-hmm. But a player can do some really screwy things with his barrel before contact and be rolling his, maybe his barrel's way down and then he flips his wrists up and then right at contact, that number looks good.
Sure.
And he hits a little ground ball of the pull side, right? So the result isn't there. So no, I'm not 100% attack angle is what you do. So if I have a player, I will put the sensor on him and I will put video on him. Mm-hmm. And what I actually look for is what is the attack angle if I back it up? Mm-hmm. What is the vertical bat angle if I back up the video from point of contact? Because it gives you the reading at contact. I actually want to see what the story is before contact. So I'm actually, utilizing the high-speed video in conjunction with the metrics and the attack angle to tell the story of how did he get to this number? Now maybe the number's bad. So, for instance, I had a young player who was struggling here, again in Texas, and he had a bad weekend. He comes in and his attack angle, and I know him, right? And I know that he's kind of a pull side ground ball guy, and he hits high fly balls to the opposite field. Yeah. So I said, look, if you want to we need to change this. Like, this isn't, he was just a guy that kind of comes in and hits, and we make tweaks. But it was like, look, you need to actually make this change. Yep. And this is a hard-working kid. And so he was 20 to 22 degrees when he would hit balls to the pull side. Mm-hmm. That was his attack angle. Mm-hmm. So I said, look, you got to think about doing this, this, and this, right? So we're working on, essentially swinging down more, working on lower extension, working on shortening up his hand path, yada, 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 right? Mm-hmm. So he goes out 2 days later and hits the first 2 home runs over the fence he's ever hit, swinging down. So I lowered his attack angle. So his attack angle was a 22. Now I got his attack angle closer to like 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, instead of ground balls, he's hitting fly balls. So most people think, well, that's silly. Shouldn't you, if you swing up more, you should probably hit the ball higher and farther. But that's not the case. Everything has a measurable, tool. There's too much of everything, right? Yeah. We have to stay in moderation. So that made a huge adjustment. And then that kid worked. And now he's dominating. He's young, right? He's only 11 years old, and he's not a big 11-year-old at all. Mm-hmm. But that dude is totally dominating his age group right now after making that attack angle change, which actually started deeper in the zone. I had to fix something he did at launch with his hands in order to fix his attack angle out in front.
I think you said one of the smartest things that any hitting coach has ever said, and this is a brilliant approach. It's not just implementing drills and doing things like hitting coaches do nowadays on the internet, posting videos. What it comes down to is understanding the story of what that player's swing is, and you try to understand that story, and I equate it to a house. Having the framework of a house, okay, now we have to fill in that house. And I feel like that's understanding the player's story, so to speak, quote on air quotes, in their swing. We're looking at it on video as we did years ago. And then implementing what we need to implement and doing what we need to do to get that player to reach their potential. I think that's absolutely brilliant, and it's something that's lost upon the hitting community nowadays. You have to understand the hitter's story first.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. I had a call yesterday with my boss. Let's just put it like that, with the team that I work for. And, he had mentioned, he's like, I would say, I'm just looking at video and I'm like, this guy's going to have issues here, here, and here. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he absolutely does. And I don't see those. I don't see the 300 at bat spray chart. I don't see where that player makes outs. But I can attribute it to something that maybe goes wrong in the swing or something that doesn't quite match up with the swing. Mm-hmm. And that's the first thing, like when I'm working with any player, we had a player from Seattle come into town, and I always, big, strong kid. And I always ask him, what is your, take me through your last 20 at bats. What do your outs look like? Are your outs to the pull side, or are they to the opposite field? Are you striking out? Okay, how are we getting to 2 strikes? Is it a patience? Are you taking too many pitches? Are you fouling good pitches back? Okay, yeah, I foul a lot of pitches. I feel like I'm right on straight back. Boom. So that sets off a flag, something that he's doing mechanically. All my outs are rollovers to the pull side, right? Okay, that's something. Or all my outs are like straight up pop-ups to the pull side. Okay, that's something totally different. So I'm trying to paint this picture of, what this player does in game at bats, what his issue is. And typically just by talking to him, I can know what his swing is going to look like as soon as he starts hitting. Yeah. And then, of course, we put the video and the metrics on him, and then I can kind of dive in a little bit more. And then we create a plan. But that's the difference. Like every player, part of the issues I have with, stuff I see, on Twitter, and some of it's really great too. But, is you don't just do that with every player. Like every player doesn't need that drill.
Not one size fits all.
Every player doesn't need that move.
Yeah.
If you teach a player that's dumping their barrel or has a casting issue or has a collapsing issue or whatever, or a jumping issue to the front line, and you teach them to do certain drill, it's going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So, I never give people plans. It's like my online academy, like the Epstein Online Academy. What is the first thing we do? I don't give you drills when you sign up.
Yeah.
When you sign up, you get some informational drills. Here's how your footwork should be. Here's some big league breakdowns. Here's some, how your hand should work. And then I don't give a player drills until I see their swing. You submit a video. I review the video. Okay, you need to do this, this, and this to work on, whatever your issues are. But it's not just, here's a library of drills, do them all. Well, that's wasting time if you don't need to do certain things. And then it could be causing problems for other people.
Yeah, so there's really no, you kind of answered the question right there. There's really no prescribed drills for a proper attack angle. It's just based off the player's story. Yeah, you're shaking your head no. Yeah.
It's exactly, I'm sorry, I got off topic there, but it's exactly what it is. I mean, some players I'm like, we had a class the other day, right, of, drop-in class. We had 5 or 6 players, and 2 of them swung down too much.
Yeah.
Right? They were like a 0-degree attack angle, maybe negative once in a while. And those players were like, hey, sit back. We need you to, do this with your lead arm, throw the Frisbee more. I want you to finish higher, whatever it is, swing up. And then there were other kids that were swinging up too much and were like, hey, we need you to do this with your front arm. We need you to do this with your top hand to fix that. And that's what makes good coaching.
Yeah.
And that's what was fun for me at the college level, because all of a sudden I got 15 guys I got to work with, not one. Mm-hmm. And I got to set up plans for all of them, and I got to set up stations for pregame, and to organize that was fun. Like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. You don't. You need to do this, this, and this. So I would separate them, and then it made life a little bit more difficult, but eventually it made the players better, and that's why we do this. That's why we coach.
How have colleges, and again, talking in terms of attack angle right now, we'll get to launch angle in a little bit, but how have colleges and high school programs adapted, you think, if at all? And how can they do a better job of implementing this data, attack angle, without trying to do too much with it and tying their players into a knot?
I would say college players are very, or I should say college coaches are, they all go to the ABCA, mm-hmm. and they all get the technology. They have to be they have to know how to implement the technology.
Right.
Because what people do is they just say, I want this number. You need to be at this number. You need to be at 15 degrees on your attack angle. Mm-hmm. And the kid's like, okay. And the kid gets there, right? The kid's athletic enough to figure out how to get to that attack angle. But maybe all of a sudden to get to that attack angle, they're starting to do weird stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because the little device says 15 degrees. That's the implementation problem that I see with high school coaches, college coaches, and travel coaches. There's a girl I work with, the online academy, and she said, hey, my travel coach wants all of our numbers to be here, at this number. And I'm like, well, that's not your game. Right. You're 105 pounds. Yeah. Your number needs to be here. And that number needs to be at a certain contact point, right? Yeah. When you hit it out in front, if you're at 15, you're okay. But that's not where you're good. You're good when you let that ball get to your front foot. You need to be closer to like 6 or 7 degrees. And so what happens is people just think, oh, this number's good. So now all of a sudden I get players with maybe a 15-degree attack angle, which should be out in front. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they dump their barrel. So their 15 degrees is deep in the zone. But they're like, oh, I'm at 15. This is great. And then they hit high fly balls 250 feet to right field or the opposite field. Yeah. And then they don't play anymore. And maybe that was attributed to a certain number. So we have to be very careful with how we utilize technology because it can be very useful, but it's not like, oh, here you go. Like, make it say 5. Yeah. Make it say 10. Make it say 15, and you're good.
Yeah.
That's your wisdom, right? It's your wisdom speech that you like to say, right? You have to know the information, and then you have to have a background on what makes it work.
It's a little discerning, though, to hear that the fact that the coach told her you have to hit this certain number. So what I gather from all that is if these coaches, and this goes for high school and college, if they don't understand how to properly use the data and they're just doing it because it's peer pressure and they feel like they're behind in not using this technology, then they just shouldn't use it at all. Just keep it simple. Yeah. Go back to the meat and potatoes of teaching hitting and trying to make your hitters better.
That's the key to coaching. Well, a number, if you're bench pressing, and you see your number go up, okay, that's one thing. But, the swing is dynamic. The swing is ever changing, depending on the pitch and this and that, we can't just put a number on stuff, when you're practicing it. It has to fit with that player.
Yeah. Coming up, Jake and I discuss launch angle in depth, a lot more depth. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's talk about what's going on at the lab this week. I got an email. There's some exciting news. Former Major League Baseball pitcher and Texas A&M Aggie, Alex Wilson, is joining the staff. In fact, he'll be leading the 9U to 14U classes that consist of arm care and velocity training, and he'll also be leading a throwing program. That's very exciting for you guys.
Willie is awesome. So we're really excited. We got to know him, we haven't been open that much, but this summer, and he's a mainstay here in College Station, big leaguer. He's a World Series champion. He's a former Aggie. He's bright. He knows technology, but he knows real life instruction, and he knows feels, and he knows the grind of a season, and he knows, having to, compete. That's probably my favorite part of having a great pitching guy like that is when you don't have your stuff, you got to be able to still compete. And he has that mentality. He's a real tough, he was a tough guy when he pitched, and the way he works out, and then you get him away from that, and he's like a big teddy bear. So we're excited. He's going to be great with the kids. He's starting next week. Yes, throwing programs. We got our Sandlot games, which are so much fun. Those things are totally full. It's like get kids out there in the morning. It's getting hot here in Texas, so getting hot on the turf. We get them out there. We get 2 teams. They play for a couple hours. We have coaches out there to kind of help facilitate everything. But what a great way to get kids active and obviously, fielding ground balls and making throws and then trying to hit some dingers too is never a bad thing. So we have that, and then obviously the lab. We're probably about 85% full with our lab membership, so we're cruising right along here. With our evening classes, still have a few spots left, but those guys are they're trugging along, man. It's been a lot of fun down here.
Yeah, Jake mentioned the Sandlot on turf. That's $25, by the way, for 2 hours with coaches guiding players through a proper warm-up and then a Sandlot-style game, as Jake mentioned, with instruction from coaches. Catchers, by the way, also encouraged to bring their gear and play the position. And the aforementioned 9 to 14U group arm care and velocity building class, $30 to $55, $30 for 55 minutes, I should say. Indoor hitting classes, $45 for 90 minutes. Individual hitting and pitching lessons for $75. And hitting memberships for $195. So these are pretty good price points, I think, and very fair for getting some of the best overall instruction around. And to be clear, and this was in the email as well, I wanted to make this very clear, all social distancing rules are in effect and posted at the door when you walk in. And by the way, and we talked about this last week, if you aren't in Texas, that doesn't matter because you can sign up for an online subscription at EpsteinHitting.com and to the Online Hitting Academy for direct online instruction, drills, annotations, and a lot more.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got you covered, man. We got all the good stuff. And honestly, we have a bunch of people driving in. I got a couple players from Florida driving in next week. The Southeast is somewhat drivable to us, and then all over Texas. So you don't have to be right in College Station to come visit us. We do. We have out-of-state players in all the time. And yes, we're keeping it safe for sure. Parents, unfortunately, they got to kind of hang out outside for a little bit or wear a mask. We got all that kind of covered, and we're only keeping 10 people in the huge facility. So I think that's why our membership stuff is killing it, is because, everybody has their own station. There's no waiting. I go to facilities all the time, and they're 3 deep in every cage, and nobody's getting reps. Yes. So the social distancing has actually helped us in creating a better training environment and program for our players, so they get a little bit more individual attention. They get more quality swings, and because we have the space, we're able to do it on a nightly basis. So yeah, come on out, give us a try.
Yeah, and for those younger kids who have a very short attention span, social distancing and coaching is great because they do less talking, more focusing, and certainly more working. If you ask me, here's the deal. Look, I worked with Jake personally years ago. I've said this many times on the show. And I still subscribe to his theories today. And honestly, I can't tell you how many coaches in the pro ranks I've talked to who know the names Mike and Jake Epstein have nothing but positive things to say about their coaching. And that's the truth. So for more information and to get started, log on to EpsteinHitting.com or call 512-695-8875 or log on to thelabbcs.com. Again, that is thelabbcs.com. We are discussing attack angle and launch angle today. This is volume 2 of our data series. Let's discuss attack angle now. Just overall, what is your definition? Let's talk launch angle now. What is your definition of launch angle in your own words? And what was your reaction when it first came into play? Was there a rush, an urgency on your part to teach it, learn as fast as you can, teach it? Did you feel any pressure? What's your definition, and what was your reaction to when it became really prevalent?
I don't remember like an actual day. It was such a slow transition in. I grew up with obviously my dad and Ted Williams stuff. So Ted Williams said you got to swing up. So there's attack angle right there. You got to swing up 10 to 15 degrees. The ball's coming down roughly 10 degrees. Now we're seeing, balls really only drop maybe 4 to 10 degrees at the major league level, right? Guys throw pretty hard with a high spin rate. Regardless, that's where attack angle kind of came to me. So the other thing was, are we trying to hit line drives? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we got to figure out, we got to hit the ball in the air, right? Ted Williams said you do damage when balls are hit in the air, right? There's not extra base hits on ground balls for the most part, unless it's right down the line. So, I grew up with somewhat, launch angle theory, if you want to call it that. Like, it might be the lamest term I've ever heard. Oh, it's a launch angle swing. Yeah. That's not what it is. So launch angle is the vertical angle of the ball traveling through space right at contact. So right after contact, the first 3 feet, what is the angle of the ball as it relates to the Earth's surface? So that's what we're looking at. Okay, so now we got to figure out what is ideal I think we're talking baseball savant next week, but, what is ideal launch angle, for exit velocity, right? So, at the major league level, if you hit a ball above 90 miles an hour at like 15 degrees, you're going to hit like 800, 900, something crazy, 950. I don't remember what the actual number is. Your extra base hits are going to be like, 18 to 30, 18 to 28. How high can you possibly hit it? Okay, you could probably hit home runs, close to 38 degrees on a launch angle. But you got to hit the ball hard enough to do that. So if you cut a ball and you hit it 38 degrees, it's only going to have an 80 mile an hour exit velocity, right? So meaning if you're swinging down at a ball, going down, and you're hitting that at 35, 38 degrees, the impact doesn't have enough inertia. You're not hitting enough of the ball. You're just cutting a portion of it that it's just going to be a flyout. But if you launch that ball at 38 degrees and say the ball's coming down at 8 degrees and you're swinging up at, 10 degrees and you're hitting just underneath the middle of the ball, well, then that ball is going to launch at maybe 100 degrees or 100 miles an hour off the bat, and it will go bye-bye. So what we try to do is we try to match launch angle to attack angle. And what you're trying to do is create a delta, a difference of those numbers that still creates enough bat speed. So, if a ball is coming down at 10 and you swing up at 10 and you hit the middle of the ball, it's going to leave at 10 and it's going to be a knuckleball up the middle. Okay. If you swing up at 6 and the ball's coming down at 10, that's only a difference of 4 degrees, and it launches at, say, 25 degrees with backspin. Well, that ball is perfect. I mean, that's just a line drive that's going to carry, 300 and whatever, 90 feet. Yeah. So there's a lot to that. So attack angle, it's different parts of the field. Where do you want your attack angle to be higher? I'm sorry. Where do you want your launch angle to be higher? You want your launch angle to be higher to the pull side and less to the opposite field. But that's not usually the case. When I got to Mizzou, most of the guys had higher launch angles to the opposite field.
Interesting.
And those balls don't carry because our length of stroke is shorter, right? Our bat speed's only at 85% on pitches middle away. So there were a lot of flyouts to right field. Then when they would get their bat head to maximum speed, they would hit, kind of top spin ground balls and line drives to the pull side. But at 100 miles an hour, well, that didn't do anybody any good. 100 mile an hour ground balls and out in the SEC. Yeah. So making sure your launch angle to the right field, that's crucial. That's crucial stuff for players that want to be successful.
And just for a little more context, if you do go to baseballsavant.com and look at the hitting leaderboard, launch angle is the second number in at the top of the page. So when you go to the leaderboard, you see launch angle right away. It seems like it's valued more than attack angle, at least in my opinion. It's talked about a lot more, certainly.
It is. It's a result, right? So we use the hit tracks, and the hit tracks is great, but the hit tracks, there's no spin coefficient. It doesn't take into consideration humidity. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that goes into a ball flight, right? Hit tracks is going to tell you it's moving this fast on this angle, and if it goes in a straight line, it goes here. Rapsodo takes it a little bit further, and it gives you spin. So it says, okay, the spin axis was, a few degrees to the right, so you're either going to gain distance with the spin, or you're going to lose distance if it's top-spin, right? Or if you're going to lose distance if it has too much backspin. If you're looking at like 5,000 RPMs of backspin. So
that happens too. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that happens when you swing, have that V swing. You swing down too much. You really get on top of the ball. It has that backspin, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just a little looping flare. It's
just a little soft, like cut shot. Yeah, it'd be like in tennis, it would be a cut shot, right? So if you combine all of them, right, you got the Rapsodo and you got the hit tracks, right? You can combine that, and you got Blast and maybe TrackMan at the stadium. We were talking about that yesterday on our call with the TrackMans at the stadium, but But really, that's just giving you launch angle and velocity. So there is, what was your original question as I lost it? Oh, it seems launch angle is more prevalent, right? Yeah, because it is. It's the result. So, and sometimes you can tell a player, look, buddy, I don't care what you do. What is you talk to old golf professionals, right? The ball doesn't lie. Like, I could go watch somebody take BP out on a field and watch the ball flight and know exactly what they're doing mechanically. Yeah. Because I've looked at so much video, right, over the last 20 years. But the ball doesn't lie. So that's what the launch angle is telling you. How did you hit the ball on this trajectory? Now, what was the speed, right? That's probably the line item right next to launch angle is what's the speed of the ball. So if what players are doing, whether it's beneficial or not, they're trying to maximize both launch angle and ball speed. Okay, right? So if I hit it hard and I hit it high, 30 degrees, 35 degrees, then that's going to be really great. How do they get there? Again, we've talked about this all day today. What is the story of them getting the bat? Like, look, people are athletic, people are big. What they're trying to do is they're doing that off a tee sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so that ball's not even moving. So to hit a ball 35 degrees off a tee hard, you kind of have to swing up almost 35 degrees. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. So now you're trying to swing up 35 degrees. What do you have to do at the first part of your launch? You got to dump your barrel really, really low in order to be able to swing up and hit a ball at 35 degrees. Boom, there's a problem. Or they'll try it, okay, let's just do it on front toss. And guys are doing the same thing off front toss, and it looks good on the hit tracks. And then all of a sudden you crank up a machine to 85 miles an hour and everybody swings and misses at the first 20 swings. Yeah. I see it all the time. And that's why when we do we do home run derby just because it's dang fun, right? Like at the end of every session and with the high school guys, buddy, they compete and it is a blast. So we'll load up the machine, but we don't do home run derby necessarily. Like maybe once a month we'll do it off front toss. But for the most part, it's like, it's not home run derby as in, hey, we're going to just throw you cookies. Like, we're going to set that machine at, 80 to 90 miles an hour, and we'll give you a bunch of outs, but we're trying to square balls up. And what that does is that tells me if guys are cheating to hit home runs or if they're trying to find barrels and hit line drives. And if they're cheating, you'll see guys, they'll swing and miss. And there's no reason you should be swinging and missing. Now, you can fight balls off. We saw Mookie Betts fighting balls off the hack attack on Twitter. The hack attack is hard. Let me tell you, that thing catches a seam. It throws nasty stuff. And so, we train in that environment. So when guys get out, they've been getting out on the weekends in their showcases, and they're like, the pitching is so much easier because you drill it so hard with those hack attacks every week at the facility. So anyway, launch angle is great, but you really have to make sure that launch angle is happening in a competitive environment and not off a tee and not off front toss.
So I got a lot from that, but the main point I got from that is when you're coaching and players are hitting off that hack attack, you're making it harder for them in a controlled environment. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it's easier
and it's not. Well, for the older guys, we are. Okay. For the high school guys that, mechanics are good. I'm setting, hey, what are we going to see this weekend? We're probably going to see 86. Okay, so we're going to set, and the hack attack's like 5 miles an hour more difficult. So if you set a hack attack at 90, it's like 95 with cutters and sinkers coming out of the same machine. Right. Okay. So because it'll catch a seam and move about, 7 or 8 inches either way sometimes. So, yes, we're overtraining them during certain weeks. Okay,
that's what it's called. It's called overtraining.
We're overtraining them. We're giving that slider maybe a little bit more break. We're giving it maybe a little bit more velocity. So when they see, anytime you see a ball come out of an arm versus out of a machine where it pops out, it seems so much slower. So we're prepping them, at game speeds that are maybe 10% tougher than game speeds, right? So that they can compete when the pressure is on. Like, it doesn't do you any good to just look good off front toss all day long.
Yeah. Well, that's not front
makes toss. You feel good. It makes you feel good. And you know what? There's a time.
Good warm up.
We do a lot of front toss too. Yeah. When we're working on something. But if we're prepping for the season and we're staying sharp for the season, you have to do a little bit of front toss. You got to do a little bit of tee work, and then you got to do a little bit of competitive velocity
Yeah.
Because they don't get it. Big leaguers are going to see 95 every single day. So
Right.
they don't
Yeah.
need to train at that. In the offseason, they'll train off those hack attacks.
Mhm.
I think we talked about that story with Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant about, is the hack attack supposed to, place the bat up my rear end? Is that like a thing?
Actually, I don't think we've ever heard that story.
We didn't talk about that. So
No.
Chris Bryant has been using a hack attack for, whatever. I don't know how long.
Mm-hmm.
The big one, right? That throws, 100 miles an hour. So I don't know, a few years ago, he told Riz to, hey, you should get one of these for your off-season training, put it in your cage, wherever that backyard or wherever, you're living.
Yeah.
So he did. So he bought it. And after the first day, he called Bryant and he's like, is that machine supposed to make me feel terrible? And because I can't get the bat out of my rear end after hitting off it. And Bryant said, yes. He said, you will fight. You might hit 1 out of 10 balls the first couple days off that machine, set at 95. He said, but in a week, it's going to be easier. And in 2 weeks, it's going to be easier. He says, you're never going to own that machine. That machine is always going to own you.
Yeah.
But when you start to face live competition, it's easier than what you're training, right? So doesn't mean you do that every day.
And you have a hack attack at the lab, right?
We have 3 of them. We have 3 of those big things.
Okay.
And we can trick those out to, all kinds of different spin rates. So I can get it, hey, we're going to face, Kevin Brown today, and I can make, one of the wheels go faster than another one.
Yeah.
And impart more spin. So it's like a right-handed sinker, a heavy sinker coming in. Or, we can say, okay, we're going to do a lefty today and do different stuff. So when players are trained at that high speed, it's kind of like what I always use the analogy of is an airline pilot, right? Like, I guarantee you, I don't know for sure. I probably should watch the movie, or read a book. But Sully, right? Sully, the birds got in his engines and Sully landed that sucker in the Hudson, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, at some point in his life, he was in a simulator, where zero visibility. His engines fail. Mm-hmm. His flaps don't work. His landing gear is out, and he's got to find a way to get that plane down because there's 1 in a million chance that might happen when he's, in the cockpit. And sure enough, it did. Sure. And I feel that that's how we have to train hitters sometimes is, hey, you might not be facing an 86 mile an hour slider, but let's sit here and see what it looks like at least.
Right.
Like, let's watch that thing so that, if we run into that guy, your brain has a point of reference for that pitch.
Really? So you should train in, because there is some pushback on this. Coaches should train players in tougher controlled environments and try to get them to be as perfect as humanly possible. It's not possible to be perfect, but as perfect as they possibly can be in tough circumstances in a controlled environment. Because you just mentioned a perfect analogy with a pilot. I mean, you hear about it sometimes in space. If you ever seen the movie, if you ever see the movie, Armageddon with Bruce Willis.
Right. Yeah.
It's a little bit exaggerated, but when they're flying in the jet and they're going through the worst circumstances in their space training, there's some humor to that. But you notice that they're being prepped for the toughest possible situation that they may encounter in a controlled environment, and they have to get it right. And this goes for any pilot training, I would imagine. Get it right in that controlled environment.
And it doesn't mean that's what you want to do every single day of every single week, but it is a part of the training model. Now, if I have a player in a group that isn't ready for that because he's working on a swing change, and because he's got some kind of catastrophic issue with his top hand or bottom hand or elbows or footwork, he's not, we're not putting him in that environment until his mechanics are good. So we'll see that more in, our high school, college groups, especially here at Texas. Like, high school baseball is no joke. Like, these guys can play. Mm-hmm. These guys can absolutely. You make a high school team in Texas, like, you can play, and you succeed at the varsity level in Texas, like, you can play. They train a lot different than any other place in the country in terms of practicing and dedication, and they work guys out. A lot of times high school is just like, oh, we just kind of show up for games. We train in January, and then we start to hit the field in February. Like these dudes train in the summer for high school baseball, man. That's awesome. So, and they play on their club team. So for those guys that, there's not a catastrophic issue to their swing. Yeah. Towards the end of that training session, we're going to test them a little bit, and put them in a pressure environment and make them compete against each other, because essentially that makes them better. Yeah. And we've seen success. I mean, maybe we messed somebody up, but we're starting to see it now that guys are back playing. They're competing at a much higher level than their teammates are, just because they're training at a higher level than their teammates are during the week.
Just to put a bow here on launch angle, I don't think I missed anything, but I just want to add a little bit more context. Rhys Hoskins, Edwin Encarnacion, Mike Trout, Brandon Belt, Austin Hedges, Kevin Biggio. In that order on BaseballSavant.com, they're in the top 6 in launch angle. And this surprised me, Jake, because Alex Bregman, who had the 9th highest launch angle at 19.6 on BaseballSavant.com, to me his swing is pretty ideal in terms of how flat it is and having that distinct adjustability that he has. Maybe you agree, maybe not. But this seems to me where launch angle, it gets a little bit confusing, and it can be a little bit deceptive. Can you read those
names again for me, please?
Yeah, Rhys Hoskins. This is all in the order.
Okay, big kind of fly ball hitter, right?
Right. This is all in order. Power hitter. All in order 1 to 6. So Rhys Hoskins, Edwin Encarnacion, Mike Trout, Brandon Belt, Austin Hedges, Kevin Biggio.
Huh. So, I mean, I'm not familiar with all of those swings, obviously, but that doesn't, I mean, there are pretty good hitters in that, right? Mm-hmm. But Brandon Belt is not a home run hitter.
No.
He's supposed to be, but he hits like 12 to 15 home runs a year. And he's 6'5" and 230 pounds. But what does he do? He hits a ton of fly balls to like left center. Okay. A lot of them are outs.
Yeah.
Okay. But that gets his launch angle up. But he also couples that with ground balls to the pull side, right? So that evens it out. So I would say, this number, average launch angle, I don't know if I would put a lot of weight in that. Mm-hmm. If you look at Bregman's swing and you look at somebody like Belt's swing, those are like two ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Bregman's like so flat and so level, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
His attack angle, you're probably looking at like averaging 10 attack angle. And then if you look at somebody like Belt in that same position, hitting a ball at your front toes, he's probably like 18 to 20.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I buy into that, because I mean it makes sense, right? Like you have a real flat swing. What does Bregman's miss? A little cut pop-up straight up in the air, just missed it.
Yeah.
He doesn't hit like weak fly balls to the opposite field. He'll just hit straight up pop-ups.
Yeah.
So what is that angle, though? That angle might be like 65 degrees up. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you take a 65 degree up, and then the next one he hits at whatever, -10. What is that average? That average is 50 degrees with his launch angle. So I'm not sure if I would look too much into the total average. I mean, if we could look into maybe hits, what is their average launch angle on base hits?
Right.
Singles, doubles, home runs. That would make a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
Because you could average a chopper and a pop-up, and that could average like 20 degrees.
Yeah.
And that'd be like, oh, that's sweet.
And this is where it gets very deceiving. And this is where we put, I think, too much weight into launch angle. I remember a couple of years ago talking to an executive in our organization. I told him, I said, right to his face, I said, look, so-and-so, launch angle, it can be very deceptive. It's not the end-all, be-all. And he kind of looked at me with a little bit of a blank stare, as if, how can you say something like that? I don't think you understand. No, I do understand. The problem is I do understand. It can be very deceptive, and when you understand the mechanics of the swing and other metrics that may come into play, why are we just talking about launch angle here? It's not the end-all, be-all.
Yeah. I mean, if you're training and you're trying to get to hit extra base hits, then, yeah, I'm training batting practice or whatever, and I'm trying to get you 15 to 25 degrees. Mm-hmm. For that, launch angle is great. Knowing what your launch angle is great.
Yeah.
Giving a guy a contract based on what his launch angle is
a mistake.
Average launch angle, again, that launch angle, maybe his average launch angle is really good, but he hit 225. Yeah. with 15 home runs. Like, okay, like that doesn't play in. I don't know. And maybe I need to look deeper into that reading. Maybe it is only on balls in play, or maybe it's only balls that are hit a certain velocity. I don't think so. Or maybe balls that are recorded as hits. But if it's just launch angle on all balls hit in play, that doesn't really mean much to me.
I don't think I missed anything for launch angle. Did I?
You're a bright guy.
I think
you're an East Coast graduate.
I think I got we hit every point on launch angle this week. Pretty sure. At least the important bullet points.
I think so.
Okay. Just making sure I don't want to miss
it.
anything.
And it could blow your mind. I mean, if you look so much into data, it could really get crazy. But know that everything launch angle is cause and effect, right? What is the bat causing the ball to do? Mm-hmm. So you can't just look at, launch angle without attack angle. Mm-hmm. Let's see what those. The whole Bregman, and I haven't seen Biggio's swing, but the whole Bregman versus like Brandon Belt, who I'm very familiar with his swing. He's been in the league a long time. Mm-hmm. Those two guys are like so polar opposites with their swing mechanics and swing playing. For them to have similar average launch angles is kind of mind-blowing to me.
The conclusion of the show, this week's episode number 13, is coming right up. But first I want to break in here and talk to you a little bit about the new item that is currently available in the official team store of the Toronto Blue Jays and the Dunedin Blue Jays, the J Shop. It's the Toronto Blue Jays and, of course, Dunedin Blue Jays face mask. I have one of these, and it's a new item that's available online for delivery options, pickup options as well, of course, here in Florida. And in the state of Florida, the Tampa area, quick little story, I had to go and get gas and coffee from one of my favorite convenience stores the other day. And before I walked in, I saw a sign on the window that said, "You must wear face covering." Well, so luckily for me, I went back to my car, grabbed my Toronto Blue Jays face mask, put it on, got my coffee, my gas, and kind of kept it on. And I didn't even realize it as I was driving because it was so comfortable. Whether you want to wear a face mask or not, some places, as the convenience store that I was in the other day, are making you do it. And what better way to fit in and follow the rules than wearing your favorite team's face mask, that team logo with the face mask. I think it's great. I really do. The Toronto Blue Jays and Dunedin Blue Jays face mask. It's now available in the J Shop. It's easy. Log on to DunedinBlueJays.com and click on the team store. So let's break into our final segment here. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. New episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on social media at Epstein Hitting on Twitter and Instagram at Jim Tara. You can submit your questions there. Or submit your questions to JimboPodcast21 at gmail.com. Again, that is JimboPodcast21 at gmail.com. Before we wrap up, we do have a question. This was sent to me from John via Instagram. And he says, "Jim, I really enjoy listening to the podcast every week. You and Jake have great chemistry. The question I want to ask for Jake, what's an easier way to go about teaching swing adjustability to kids who are under 14 years of age, preferably from 10 to 13?
Swing adjustability. So that's, putting players, number one, it starts with good mechanics, right? So I'm a big believer in mechanics, starting at age 9 or 10. There was a 6-year-old kid that walked in the door the other day, and I was like, okay, what are we going to do here? So I told mom and grandma, get him a bucket of balls, put him in the backyard, tell him to throw the ball up and hit it as far as he can. Yeah. Like, get him to know how to swing a bat and stride. So, getting a foundation is first. Once a player has a foundation, you have to be careful for adjustability, meaning that allows players to adjust. If they can stride and keep their hands back, they got a chance. So if they get to a bad launch position, they stride and their hands come with them when they drop their front heel, they're not going to have adjustability. It's that simple. So a very basic way to teach somebody how to adjust a pitch and cover pitches is to teach a 10-year-old kid how to play pepper. So you ask 10 to 13, play pepper every single day. Play pepper every single practice. Make sure they get their reps in. Make sure they can take an inside pitch and hit it to the guy on opposite side of the line. Make sure they can take a high pitch and get on top of it. Make sure they can get to a low pitch and make sure they don't chop it straight into the ground. It doesn't go anywhere. Teach that adjustability there, and then almost start playing pepper at a faster pace, right? So now let's scoot everybody back or play pepper off a machine, right? And the machine is throwing it a little bit harder and a little bit more outside or a little bit more inside. Teach them how to have bat control. Once you teach a player how to have bat control and they have good mechanics, they will be able to adjust on the fly. And then the adjustability factor, you can get as crazy as you want with it. During BP is you just, I'll do it with front toss.
Yeah.
I'll do it with front toss. I'll throw them hard, and then I'll take off 1 or 2 miles an hour, and they're going to be out in front, right? And I'm like, okay, you're going to be out in front. It's okay if you're out in front. It's okay if you lunge a little bit. But if you always lunge, if you lunge on every swing and then you're early, you're toast.
Right.
If you stay back on every swing and then all of a sudden you have to lunge, at least you have that on the back burner. So essentially, to teach adjustability, teach them back control, or teach them back control, teach them good mechanics, and then try to mess them up. And don't get mad when they're off balance.
Yeah.
Like big league players look bad all the time. Somebody hit a home run the other day. I saw screaming. They were on their front foot. It was a one-handed swing. They found a barrel. It went out of the park. You going to yell at that kid because they were off balance and hit a ball, 350 feet?
Yeah.
No. So know if you're working on adjustability and you're trying to get a player out, it is okay if they don't look perfect all the time.
So really,
on pitches, if you're changing speeds on them.
So really, the starting ground there, the base is playing pepper.
Playing pepper at a young age. Teach your kids to play pepper.
Yeah.
Gosh, nobody knows how to do that anymore. Nobody knows. If I say, hey, hit a ball to right field, can you get the knob out in front of your barrel longer? How do you do that? When I have a player that can do that, I can make a swing change really quick. So if I have a player that's dumping their barrel, I'll be like, okay, let's play pepper. They usually have no idea how to play pepper.
Yeah.
They have no barrel awareness. They have no idea where that barrel is. And what they do with their hands controls the barrel. So teaching them that at a young age, barrel control, I mean, that's Latin America right there.
Yeah.
Like, that's where they start. That's the process. So getting them to do that typically will lead to decent mechanics, actually, a decent hand path. Then all of a sudden you check mechanics, and then you just, and not all the time. You're not trying to get them out all the time for adjustability. But you might be like, okay, we have 2 strikes in this count. And you might throw them a couple good ones, right? You got 2 strikes, and then you throw them a fastball down the middle or whatever. Great. And then, a pitch later, then you throw like a little slider away and see if they can fight it off. See if they can keep their hands back to fight it off. But like I said, if your mechanics aren't good, if you launch your hands too soon, I mean, I see this every day in the online academy when I log in and start doing videos. If I would say 9 out of 10 players, when they launch their swing, when their front foot lands, after their stride, their hands are not in the right position.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things every day that I'm like, creating plans for, because that will not create adjustability if you don't have that piece locked in.
Well, hey, good stuff. And be sure to send us your questions again via social media or jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. That is jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. We mentioned Baseball Savant in small doses in this episode. We've done it in previous episodes as well. And we'll continue with our data series next week, Volume 3. We dissect baseballsavant.com. It's a website I often visit. And, Jake, you've brought it up, actually, plenty of times. You brought it up on one of the first episodes of the show, and right there it clicked in my mind that we have to do a couple of episodes on baseballsavant.com. It's very useful, and we'll be talking about it next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. That's just raw data, great information that you can filter through.
Yeah.
You can get lost in it, so we got to be careful. Yeah. I don't want to get lost next week.
Yeah, and you know what? If people want to follow along with next week's episode when it does come out, be sure to log on to baseballsavant.com. But we'll be talking about that website, great stats that give just more insight to both pitchers and hitters alike. So we'll be talking about that next week, baseballsavant.com. Stay safe. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next Monday. Take care.